With so many cool heroes in Deadlock to choose from, I'm on a mission to learn them all. I'm going to spend 50 games with each character to discover what they can teach me and how they can help me become a better player. Afterwards, I'll discuss my findings on things like builds, positioning, playstyle, and of course, fun, all for the love of learning. So today, let's talk about Viscous. Deadlock is a game that, to many, is defined by its skill expression. Regardless of which area of the game excites you the most, there's endless things to learn or steps to take along your journey, and it's entirely up to you to choose where you invest yourself. Whether you're focusing on movement, melee, gunplay, macro, itemization, or anything in between, Deadlock offers so much to sink your teeth into, and it all comes with near limitless progression and fun to be had. Each hero within the cast will have their own strengths or weaknesses that'll either align with a player or challenge them, and exploring that relationship is what's excited me the most about this series. As I've branched out across the cast, I've learned countless unique lessons in each episode, while also discovering which areas of the game itself resonate with me and which continue to challenge me. When it comes to Viscous, unique would certainly be the word that I would choose for him, and somewhat to my surprise, challenge me he did. Reflecting on my time with Viscous, I'd say he has both a low skill floor as well as arguably the highest skill ceiling in the game, and that sense of duality was something that was always present for me. With that in mind, Viscous was kind of hard for me to pin down, as some elements of the experience were easily comparable to other heroes, while just as much stood in complete contrast. He's both somewhat beginner friendly, as well as being a hero you could specialize in for thousands of games, still finding new things to learn. His kit has both the single easiest ability I've used thus far, as well as the most difficult, and though it can be easy to get some value from Viscous, he's also extremely technical to master. If you visualize Deadlock's skill expression on a spectrum, for me, Viscous somehow managed to fall on both polar ends simultaneously, and more than anything, my time with Viscous was defined by the gap in between. In learning some of the nuances of Viscous's kit and finding which parts resonated with me, I was able to begin closing that gap. Although I'm unlikely to dedicate the time required to play Viscous anywhere near his full potential, it was still so thrilling to even get a glimpse of that light at the end of the tunnel. In a game as deep, technical, and expressive as Deadlock, it's mesmerizing to see just how far its limits can be pushed, and to me, it seems like there's no character that can break those bounds quite like Viscous. So if you're unfamiliar with Viscous, here's a quick rundown on his kit. His one is called Splatter, where Viscous throws a ball of goo, damaging and slowing enemies on impact, as well as leaving puddles of goo on the ground. Allies will slide faster on the goo puddles, but enemies will be slowed when they're in one, which lasts for 10 seconds at base. Splatter also bounces once at base, giving it 2 points of impact, but multiple hits to the same target will deal less damage. When upgraded, Splatter gains increased damage and radius, reduced cooldown, and at max, it gains an additional 2 bounces for 4 impacts total, as well as increased scaling. Viscous's 2 is the Cube, where he encases himself or an ally in a cube of goo, which protects from damage and increases health regen while inside. Although you are invulnerable to damage in the cube, you can still be targeted by things like a knockdown, in example, and you cannot take any actions. You can choose to cancel the cube early, and when you exit the cube, you gain 8 seconds of increased move speed and stamina recovery. Momentum will also be maintained when you're cubed, and since allies can still be targeted, this allows Viscous to move his cubed allies through slopes, melees, rescue beams, and more. This mix of iframes, healing, and mobility makes Cube arguably the single best save ability in the game. When upgraded, Cube gets an increase to the move speed and stamina recovery, it gains increased regen and duration, and at max, it dispels any non-ultimate debuffs while also getting reduced cooldown. Viscous's 3 is called Puddle Punch, where he summons a fist from just about any surface in the world, which damages enemies on contact and displaces them. Punches deal melee damage and apply as slow, but since they count as a melee, they can be parried, including with rebuttal to deal damage back to the Viscous. Punches will also displace teammates and will generally fling you in the direction of the punch, but it is momentum dependent, meaning you can alter that trajectory based on your movement prior. This can be used to increase momentum after a wall bounce, further your distance after a dash jump, and much more. While Puddle Punch is very tricky to get the hang of and it can be tough to use consistently, it's the foundation for Viscous's endless tech. When upgraded, Punch gains an extra charge and damage, increased radius, and 60% lifesteal, and at max it gains reduced cooldown as well as switching to dealing heavy melee damage instead of light. Finally, Viscous's 4 is called Goo Ball, where he morphs into a rolling ball of goo, granting Viscous 35% resists as well as dealing damage and briefly stunning enemies on impact. While the ball moves pretty fast, it also comes with a reduced level of control as it has a pretty wide turn radius. The ball does, however, bounce off of any surface it comes in contact with, meaning you need to sort of ping-pong Viscous back and forth along the environment to use it effectively. The ball can also double jump without using stamina, so while it is a bit wild to control, it offers high mobility that you can use to either offensively stun enemies or defensively escape situations. You also still have access to all of Viscous's abilities and items while in the ball, which, similar to Puddle Punch, cranks up the skill expression of this ability. You can rescue beam and pull allies as you fly past them, cube yourself mid-ult before continuing on, or Puddle Punch yourself and ride off into the sunset at the speed of sound. Ball is extraordinarily tough to work with, but when it's used to its full potential, the possibilities are nearly endless. When upgraded, Ball gains reduced cooldown, increased damage and resists, and at max it gains increased duration to both the ult and the stun. As I mentioned at the top, Deadlock is a game of vast skill expression, and one that enables each player to invest in whatever avenues excite them. For me, what excited me the most about Viscous was his potential as a support character, specifically in making saves with Cube. Although he's clearly loved by many for the more tech-heavy sides of his kit, it was really the simpler side of him that stuck out to me. Being 9 episodes deep now, I've gained a lot of experience learning heroes, and as I discussed in the Pocket episode, I've also developed my personal learning style in the process. I know for me, I'm often most challenged in a mechanical sense, and while I really enjoy working through those challenges, it can take me a while to come to grips with tougher heroes. Knowing that, I thought that I would approach my time with Viscous differently to past heroes, and instead of trying to get a fully balanced picture of him at once, I'd piecemeal it. My plan was to start off working around Cube, since it was what I was excited for and most comfortable using due to my support experience, and then I would build into Splatter to get some easy, reliable damage. As I started to learn the ropes of Viscous and test out his nuances, I was able to lean on those more approachable elements of his kit and get used to Puddle Punches or piloting ult without overly focusing on them. Overall, I think it was a really good plan, as I was not only able to get value out of Viscous almost immediately, but I was also able to narrow my focus on taking smaller, more precise steps with him. As opposed to feeling overwhelmed by attempting his more advanced tech in my earlier games, I could just try some punch movement here and there, pop an ult or two to get used to piloting it, and work to slowly piece it all together. In the beginning, I found it extremely tough to even damage an enemy with a punch, much less use it to intentionally displace people, but over time, I think this low-stakes approach to the punches was the perfect way for me to practice. Splatter was just so easy to use and so effective in a fight, I felt like I didn't need to worry about using the punches for damage, and could instead just try to get used to placing it on geometry and acclimating to how it would move people. Slowly but surely, I found stairs or slopes that I could use to stuff enemy escapes, terrain behind cover to push enemies into our tower, and walls to jumble up chaotic teamfights. Each spot I found gave me a new idea for the next, and eventually I was using punches to juggle enemies, save teammates, and maneuver around the map. I'm still only scratching the surface of what punch is capable of, but it was really rewarding to make a plan on how I would engage with such a challenging ability and see it succeed. Ult, on the other hand, was a bit of a different story, as I continued to find it extremely tough to use throughout my time with Viscous. It was rather overwhelming for me to keep track of using abilities and items on top of piloting the ult, so more often than not in an offensive setting, I didn't really get much done. However, knowing that I found it tough, I just decided to pivot my approach, and instead of using it in teamfights as I would other damaging ults, I looked at it in a similar way to Ivy ult as more of a utility option. Using Ball as an escape tool was much easier for me to manage, as I would mostly be avoiding terrain rather than trying to bounce off of it, so more often than not, that's what I reserved it for. Otherwise, I would keep it in my pocket to cancel ults whenever I could, and instead of overstaying my welcome in the ball and getting tangled up, if I felt more comfortable canceling it as soon as I got the stun off, I would. It may not have been the most optimal way to use the ult, nor the flashiest, but in the end I was happy that I was able to adjust to the ability and find what worked for me. In reflecting on my time with Viscous, it's really cool to see my progress on punch and ult, but still what stands out the most to me were the saves. It was so unbelievably satisfying to cube a teammate at 1 HP, rescue beam them to safety, and bounce enemies away with punches as they gave chase. I've been fortunate enough to have my own bacon saved many times by Viscous players, and it's just as exciting to be the one doing the saving as it was to be saved. However, I also found it rather funny, in my opinion, when they would go wrong, accidentally cubing a teammate in an ult or bouncing an enemy to their doom rather than to safety. I of course never did it intentionally, but just as Cube was a dopamine dispenser for me, it was also a laugh factory. Regardless, I had an absolute blast finding my footing with Viscous's kit, and while his more technical sides didn't speak to me quite the same as it does others, I'm thrilled that I played him the way that I did. Certain elements were in my comfort zone and some were outside of it, so I'm pleased that I could find find a place for myself somewhere in the middle. When it came to building Viscous, I kept things extremely simple, investing most of my souls into splatter damage as well as into utility to support my team alongside Cube. For my AP order, I always started off with 1 point in splatter and 1 point in punch for the extra charge before I maxed splatter then maxed Cube. I'd start with my spirit spike in lane, which was a bit messy as they were all items I was looking to upgrade from later in the game. First, I started off with extra spirit and mystic burst to up my splatter damage and so I could scale Cube's healing a little bit. Afterwards, I went with extra charge and spirit strike for punch as well as mystic expansion and improved spirit. For my green spike, I think rescue beam is a must-have on Viscous as it not only has a lot of general use, but it of course pairs perfectly with Cube. Afterwards, I would fill the spike with a counter item depending on the game, with my most popular choices being reactive barrier or dispel magic. For the gun spike, chat recommended recharging rush and spirit rend. Recharging rush is great for punch as later in the game it can deal enough damage to activate itself, which essentially grants you a free charge. We landed on spirit rend after some testing, which paired alongside spirit snatch. Each light melee punch would shred for 16%, and when upgraded to heavy melee, it would shred for 19%, which is a great amount for how easy it is to activate. While this benefit does come from the 1600 item side of Spirit Shredder bullets, since I wanted to limit my gun slots to 2, I felt it was worth the upgrade as landing a few headshots could up the shred to a maximum of 44%. Another option that I would change rend out for occasionally was weighted shots, which I would buy if I needed some debuff resist for something like a pocket or even a Venator. Outside the spikes, being a support build, I would always pick up at least one utility item, be it a knockdown, slowing hex, or curse, depending on the game. After I had the utility sorted, it was on to upgrading items from lane, with Tank Buster being great for more splatter damage, expansion to make it and punches easier to land, and rapid recharge to juggle enemies. In terms of late game items, there were 2 that really shined for me, being Mystic Reverb and Spirit Burn. Depending on the game, I would change which order I bought these 2 in, as Reverb was great if I needed sustain due to its lifesteal, and Spirit Burn was fantastic for its anti-heal. While it's not the most thrilling or complex build in the world, it more than accomplished what I was looking for, being easy damage, high utility, and of course, lots of fun. For me, there's a lot of things about doing this series that I find extremely rewarding, and while it's thrilling to see how far I've progressed in actually playing the game, I find it just as fascinating to see how far I've come in learning the game. As my strategies in-game have evolved, so too have my strategies around learning these heroes, and for me, this series is just as much about flexing those intellectual muscles as it is the mechanical ones. I'm truly so enthralled by the act of learning itself, and in my opinion, Deadlock is essentially the perfect playground for it. Part of my fascination is knowing that each player will have their own individual experience with Deadlock's skill expression, and that they'll also have an entirely unique experience in learning the game. Just as some players will gravitate towards more mechanical aspects and some towards more knowledge-based aspects, the pace and comfort at which everyone embraces those elements will differ. There's no right or wrong way to go about it in my opinion, there's just your way. Now I mention all this for a couple reasons, which is that 1, some might think that I'm missing out on certain parts of Viscous by not focusing on his technicality, and that 2, my thesis for the series may not be entirely clear. Those ideas of individuality in experiencing Deadlock are the cornerstones of this series, and really my philosophy for gaming as a whole. To me, there's no bar you have to clear, there's no rank or number you're expected to achieve, and again, there's just no right or wrong to it. Deadlock is a vast, multifaceted game that asks many things of many kinds of players, all who have unique interests, skills, and goals. Personally, my goals are just to challenge myself, learn as much as I can, and have loads of fun along the way. What I find challenging, such as Viscous tech, may come easily to others, but again, in my eyes, it's not really about that at all. I'm not concerned with my rank, I'm not concerned with being good at the game or even getting good at these heroes. I'm instead interested in experiencing the parts of Deadlock that I know bring me joy. Perhaps you completely disagree with me and you view Deadlock strictly as a competitive experience, but that's also great, as again, it's just how you personally align with the game. I think there's a lot of pressure out there, specifically in content around the game, to be good or to clear those kinds of bars. It can often lead to a sense of self-consciousness about your experience with Deadlock, and one that might cause frustration or even turn people away from the game. This series is meant to buck those trends, to forget about only winning or losing or only playing like an Eternus, and to instead consider embracing Deadlock as what I think it is, which is an extremely personal experience. No matter who you are, where you are in your journey, or what brings you to Deadlock, your experience is unique, important, and valid. If I can hope for anything with this series, it's to inspire others to enjoy this incredible game, no matter what that means to you. It's been such a blast to make this series, and it's an honor to be able to share it with all of you out there. I can't thank you enough for all of your support. While I know this was a bit of a different episode, it did seem rather fitting to me to make a weird one for the Goo Boy. I'll be looking forward to returning to him in the future, and in keeping the momentum up with the next hero. Each episode, you, the viewer, have a chance to vote on which hero I'll play next for the series. The way it works is I take the 3 top voted heroes in the YouTube comments, and on the final stream of the current heroes' games, I'll be holding the final vote over on Twitch. So if you want your favorite hero to have a horse in the race, make sure you comment them below, and if you want a say on who the winner is, make sure you come by the streams. This time around, Celeste was our winner, so I'll be starting her games the day this video goes live. I'm live every day but Thursdays starting at 5 p.m. Eastern over at twitch.tv/callmekimbo_. So if you're interested in seeing my learning process live or have any questions for me, I'd love to have you by. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what you think of Viscous and what other heroes you might like to see me learn for the series. I've also put the build ID in the description for my Viscous build if you're looking for a place to start, and you can subscribe to the channel to keep an eye out for more videos soon.